Welcome to Elevatepedia, where books are distilled into ideas that upgrade your life. Stop looking at the math, start looking in the mirror. You've been told that money is a game of spreadsheets and interest rates. It's a lie. Money is a game of ego, fear, and discipline. Your bank account isn't a reflection of your IQ, it's a receipt of your behavior. Today, we strip away the charts and expose the raw, psychological wiring that is keeping you poor or making you wealthy. This is the psychology of money. Listen closely or stay broke. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Your reality is a small sample size. Stop. Before we talk about your bank account, we need to talk about your brain. We need to talk about the lie you've been telling yourself since the moment you earned your first dollar. You think you're being rational. You think you're making choices based on facts, data, and logic. You aren't. You are making choices based on a tiny, microscopic sliver of reality that you happen to call your life. Your experience is not the rule. Your experience is the exception. Look at the world. There are 8 billion people moving through this economy. Most of them have a completely different map of the world than you do. You grew up in a time of peace. They grew up in a time of war. You grew up when inflation was low. They grew up when a loaf of bread cost a month's wages by noon and 2 months' wages by dinner. You aren't smarter than them. They aren't dumber than you. You are both just reacting to the small sample size of history you've actually seen with your own eyes. That's the key. We all want to believe we are objective. We want to believe we see the world as it is, but we don't. We see the world as we experienced it. If you were born in 1950, the stock market stayed flat for most of your young adulthood. It was a dead zone. It felt like a trap. If you were born in 1970, the market exploded during your prime earning years, and you think the stock market is a golden escalator that only goes up. Neither of you is right. Neither of you is wrong. You are both just prisoners of your own timeline. You have a choice. You can remain a prisoner of your upbringing, or you can start to see the hidden forces at play. Most people go through their entire lives thinking their financial failures are due to a lack of intelligence. It's not about intelligence. It's about perspective. You are using a map of your backyard to try and navigate the entire ocean. It doesn't work. It will never work. Think about the Great Depression. Imagine being 20 years old in 1929. You watch your father lose everything. You watch your neighbors starve. You watch the safe banks lock their doors and vanish. For the rest of your life, no matter how many charts a financial advisor shows you, you will never trust a bank. You aren't being crazy. You are being reasonable based on what you saw. But here is the hard truth. Your reasonable is someone else's insane. Your experience is not the rule. Your experience is the exception. Now look at the 1990s. If you started investing in 1992, you thought you were a genius. Everything you touched turned to gold. You thought risk was a myth. You thought the rules of gravity had been suspended. Then the year 2000 hit and the world collapsed. You weren't a genius in the 90s, and you weren't a failure in the 2000s. You were just a passenger on a ship you didn't control. It's not about intelligence, it's about perspective. If you want to be wealthy, you must stop judging other people for how they handle their money. When you see someone buying a lottery ticket, you call them stupid. You say they don't understand math. But maybe that person lives in a reality where they feel invisible. Maybe that $4 ticket is the only time in their entire week they feel like they have a chance at a better life. To them, that's a reasonable purchase. To you, it's a math error. You don't need their permission to be right, but you do need the humility to know you might be wrong. This is the foundation of the psychology of money. You must realize that your truth is just a story you told yourself based on when and where you were born. The world is much larger than your memories. The economy is much more complex than your childhood. If you want to master your money, you must first master the realization that you are biased, limited, and fundamentally uninformed about how the rest of the world works. That's the key. Transformation begins when you stop trusting your gut and start questioning where that gut feeling came from. Did it come from a textbook? Or did it come from watching your parents argue about bills in 2008? Did it come from a place of logic? Or did it come from the trauma of losing a job during a recession you didn't understand? You have a choice. You can continue to play the game with a broken map, or you can admit that your sample size is too small. You can stop blaming your luck and start looking at the environment that shaped your fears. It's not about being right, it's about being effective. Most people will never do this. They will die clinging to the financial superstitions they learned when they were 12 years old. They will spend their lives wondering why their proven methods aren't working in a world that has changed. They are waiting for the world to match their experience. The world isn't going to change for you. You have to change for the world. Your experience is not the rule. Your experience is the exception. Repeat that to yourself every time you feel certain about a move. Repeat it every time you feel the urge to judge someone else's portfolio. You are seeing a fraction of the picture. You are reading one page of a 1,000-page book and claiming you know the ending. If you want to stay poor, keep trusting your limited perspective. Keep believing that the way the world looked when you were 20 is the way it will always look. But if you want to be wealthy, truly wealthy, you must develop the discipline to look past your own life. You must learn to see the patterns that exist outside of your own ego. You mastered your perspective. Now, you must learn to navigate the invisible forces that govern your results. It's time to stop looking at the person and start looking at the power of the unseen. Chapter 2. Respect the ghost of luck. Stop giving yourself so much credit. And stop beating yourself up for things you couldn't control. We live in a culture that worships the self-made hero. We love the story of the individual who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and conquered the world through sheer force of will. But that story is incomplete. It's a fairy tale designed to feed your ego. If you want to master the psychology of money, you have to embrace a much colder, much more uncomfortable truth. Success is never as good as it looks, and failure is never as bad as it seems. You are one person in a sea of billions operating in a system of infinite moving parts. You control your effort, you control your persistence, you control your discipline, but you do not control the outcome. There is a hidden force at play in every bank account and every bankruptcy filing. It's called luck, and its twin brother is called risk. They are the invisible ghosts in the room, and if you refuse to respect them, they will destroy you. That's the key. You have to realize that luck and risk are the same thing. They are the reality that happens when things outside of your control have a greater impact on your results than anything you did intentionally. Think about Bill Gates. We talk about his brilliance. We talk about his work ethic. Both are legendary. But Bill Gates himself will tell you he won the lottery before he ever sold a piece of software. In 1968, there were roughly 300 million high school-age kids in the world. Out of those 300 million, how many went to a school that had the money and the foresight to buy a computer? 1. Lakeside School in Seattle. Bill Gates happened to be there. You don't need their permission to be successful, but you need to acknowledge the wind at your back. If Bill Gates hadn't gone to Lakeside, would there be a Microsoft? Maybe. But the odds dropped to near zero. That is luck. It's not a dirty word. It's not an insult to his hard work. It is simply a mathematical reality. But here is the part no one wants to hear. For every Bill Gates who was hit by the lightning bolt of luck, there is a Kent Evans. Kent Evans was Gates' best friend at Lakeside. He was just as brilliant. He was just as driven. They spent their nights dreaming of the future of computers together. But Kent Evans never saw the birth of Microsoft. He died in a mountain climbing accident before he graduated high school. Out of the millions of high schoolers that year, the odds of dying on a mountain are roughly 1 in a million. Your experience is not the rule. Your experience is the exception. Gates hit the 1 in a million luck. Evans hit the 1 in a million risk. Both were equally talented. Both were equally ambitious. The outcomes couldn't have been more different. It's not about talent, it's about the tailwind. If you ignore luck, you become arrogant. You start believing your own hype. You think you have a Midas touch. And that arrogance is exactly what leads you to take unnecessary risks that will eventually wipe you out. Conversely, if you ignore risk, you become a victim. You look at your failures and you decide you are a loser. You decide you don't have what it takes. You judge yourself by your results instead of your process. You have a choice. You can judge yourself by the size of your harvest, or you can judge yourself by the quality of the seeds you planted and the way you tilled the soil. The harvest is up to the weather. The planting is up to you. It's not about the outcome, it's about the system. This is why you must stop looking at individual success stories as blueprints. When you study the richest man in the world, you are studying an outlier. You are studying someone who hit a string of lucky breaks so long and so specific that they are impossible to replicate. You cannot copy luck, but you can copy patterns. That's the key. Look for the broad patterns of success and failure. Don't look at the one guy who went all in on a single stock and made $1 billion. That's a tail event. That's luck masquerading as genius. Instead, look at the millions of people who saved consistently, diversified their assets, and stayed disciplined for decades. That is a pattern. Patterns are repeatable. Luck is a lightning strike. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to be a student of the averages. If you want to survive the game of money, you must stay humble when things go well and stay compassionate when things go wrong. When you win, realize it wasn't just you. When you lose, realize it wasn't just you. This isn't about giving up your power. It's about gaining a clearer view of the battlefield. It's not about your ego. It's about the evidence. Most people will spend their lives chasing the secrets of the ultra-rich, trying to bottle the luck of the 1%. They will fail. They will burn through their capital and their sanity trying to replicate a miracle. They are playing a game they can't win because they don't understand the rules. You have a choice. You can be the person who chases miracles, or you can be the person who respects the ghost. You can build a financial life that is robust enough to survive bad luck and humble enough to handle good luck. That's the key. If you acknowledge that luck exists, you will build a margin of safety. You will save more. You will gamble less. You will realize that the goal isn't to be the biggest winner. The goal is to be the one who never gets forced out of the game. You mastered your ego by respecting luck. Now, you must learn when to stop the chase before it consumes everything you've built. You need to know when you have enough. Chapter 3. Kill your hunger for more. Listen to me carefully. The most dangerous financial liability you will ever face isn't a high-interest mortgage or a failing business. It is a moving goalpost. It is the insatiable, pathetic need for more that lives in the pit of your stomach. If you do not learn to kill that hunger, no amount of money will ever save you. You will be a slave to your own desires until the day you die, regardless of how many zeros are in your bank account. Enough is not too little. Enough is the only way to keep what you have. We live in a world designed to make you feel inadequate. The social media feed, the neighbor's new car, the Forbes list, they are all tools of psychological warfare meant to keep you running on a treadmill that never ends. Most people think the goal of the game is to win the most. They are wrong. The goal of the game is to stay on the field. But you cannot stay on the field if you are willing to burn the stadium down just to get a bigger trophy. That's the key. You have to realize that there is no limit to more. More is a horizon. The faster you run toward it, the further it moves away. If your happiness is tied to hitting a moving target, you are choosing to be miserable. You are choosing to be a victim of your own ego. You have a choice. You can decide what enough looks like today, or you can let the world decide for you. If you let the world decide, the answer will always be just a little bit more than what you have right now. Think about Rajat Gupta. This man was the CEO of McKinsey. He was a board member at Goldman Sachs. He was worth over $100 million. He had everything a human being could possibly need, and yet he wanted to be a billionaire. He wanted to sit at the big table. To get there, he committed insider trading. He threw away his reputation, his career, and his freedom for money he didn't even need. He risked what he had and needed for what he didn't have and didn't need. It's not about the money, it's about the ego. Why does a man with $100 million risk it all for $1 billion? Because he didn't have a goalpost. Because he was looking at the people above him instead of the life he had built. He forgot the most important rule of the game. There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. None. Your experience is not the rule. Your experience is the exception. But you do the same thing on a smaller scale. You get a raise, and instead of feeling wealthy, you buy a more expensive house. You get a bonus, and instead of feeling secure, you buy a faster car. You are upgrading your lifestyle to match your income, which means you are staying exactly where you started, one paycheck away from disaster. You are running faster just to stay in the same place. You don't need their permission to stop. You just need the discipline to say enough. Social comparison is the ceiling of your happiness. There will always be someone who is richer, faster, and more successful than you. If you compare yourself to them, you will always be poor. Wealth is not a number. It is a state of mind where you no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. It's not about deprivation, it's about power. When you define enough, you take your power back. You stop being a pawn in someone else's marketing scheme. You start building a wall around your life that no amount of envy can penetrate. You realize that the greatest luxury money can buy isn't a watch or a private jet. It is the ability to stop worrying about money. But you can only reach that state if you kill the hunger for more. That's the key. You have to be reasonable. It is unreasonable to expect that you will ever be the richest person in the world. It is reasonable to build a life that is comfortable, secure, and free. Most people are so busy trying to be extraordinary that they fail to achieve the ordinary stability that leads to true wealth. You have a choice. You can spend your life as a hungry ghost, always reaching for the next dollar, the next status symbol, the next hit of dopamine. Or you can be the person who walks away from the table while they're still winning. It's not about the wealth you acquire. It's about the peace you protect. Repeat this. I will not risk what I need for what I do not want. Make it your mantra. Write it on your mirror. Because the moment you lose sight of your enough, you become a target. You become vulnerable to the kind of risks that lead to total ruin. You become the person who gambles with their family's future to impress people they don't even like. Enough is the only shield you have against the volatility of life. If you want to be wealthy, you must be the master of your desires. You must be the one who decides when the game is over. If you don't, the game will eventually end you. You will keep pushing until you hit a wall, and by then, it will be too late. You mastered your desires by defining enough. Now, you must learn the most powerful mathematical force in the universe, a force that doesn't require effort but requires something much harder: patience. It's time to let time do the heavy lifting. Chapter 4: The Silent Power of Doing Nothing. Most people think that to make more money, you have to do more. You think you need to trade more, work more, pivot more, and obsess more. You've been conditioned to believe that intensity is the same thing as results. It's not. In the world of finance, intensity is often the enemy of returns. The most powerful force in the economic universe doesn't require your sweat, your genius, or your constant intervention. It requires your absence. It requires you to get out of the way. That's the key. We are talking about compounding, but we aren't talking about the math of compounding. We are talking about the psychology of it. Compounding is like planting an oak tree. If you dig it up every 6 months to see how the roots are doing, you don't have a tree, you have a dead stick. Most investors are serial tree diggers. They can't stop touching the dial. Shut up and wait. Time is the only leverage that never fails. Look at Warren Buffett. Everyone wants to talk about his value investing secrets. They want to analyze his letters to shareholders like they're holy scripture. But they ignore the most boring, most important fact. Buffett has been a professional investor for 3/4 of a century. He started at 10 years old. By the time he was 30, he had a net worth of $1 million in 1960 dollars. If Buffett had started in his 30s and retired in his 60s like a normal person, you would have never heard of him. His secret isn't that he's a 10x better investor than everyone else. It's that he's been investing for 10x longer. Over 95% of his wealth was generated after his 65th birthday. Read that again. The genius was simply staying invested long enough for the math to turn into a vertical line. You have a choice. You can try to be the smartest person in the room, or you can be the most patient person in the room. Being smart is hard. Being smart is competitive. But being patient, in a world addicted to 24-hour news cycles and instant gratification, being patient is a superpower because almost no one else is doing it. It's not about the returns you make. It's about the returns you can sustain for the longest period of time. Most people fail because they interrupt the compounding process unnecessarily. They see a market dip and they do something out of fear. They see a hot new trend and they do something out of greed. Every time you do something to your long-term plan, you are resetting the clock. You are cutting down the oak tree because you're bored with how slow it's growing. You don't need their permission to be boring. In fact, if your investment strategy feels like a thrilling adventure, you are probably doing it wrong. Real wealth creation is as exciting as watching paint dry. It is a slow, agonizing process of doing nothing while the rest of the world screams about the crisis of the week. It's not about the action, it's about the endurance. This is where your psychology betrays you. Your brain is wired for action. When you see a threat in the headlines, your lizard brain tells you to run or fight. But in the stock market, fighting usually means selling at the bottom, and running usually means missing the recovery. To win, you have to override 10,000 years of human evolution. You have to learn to sit still while your instincts are screaming at you to move. That's the key. The biggest gains don't come from being right during the bull markets. They come from not being wrong during the bear markets. If you can simply avoid being forced to sell during a downturn, you have already beaten 90% of the people playing the game. Shut up and wait. Time is the only leverage that never fails. Stop checking your accounts every day. Stop looking for the next big thing. The big thing is already here. It's the 10, 20, or 30 years you have in front of you. Every minute you spend obsessing over the daily fluctuations is a minute you are tempted to commit financial suicide. You are trying to outsmart a system that is designed to reward those who simply stay put. You have a choice. You can be the person who tries to catch every wave, or you can be the person who knows the tide is coming in regardless of what the waves do. One requires constant anxiety and perfect timing. The other requires a calendar and a pulse. It's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. Wealth is a quiet game. It's played in the decades, not the days. If you want to be rich tomorrow, you will likely be poor the day after. But if you are willing to be rich slowly, you are almost guaranteed to get there. The math is on your side, but only if your ego stays out of the way. That's the key. You have to accept that doing nothing is the hardest work you will ever do. It is an active, aggressive refusal to let your emotions dictate your future. It is the discipline of silence in a world of noise. You mastered the power of time. Now, you must learn how to protect it. It doesn't matter how much you grow if you can't survive the storms that are coming to take it all away. Chapter 5. Survival is the only strategy. Listen closely. Getting money and keeping money are two entirely different skill sets. Getting money requires you to be an optimist. It requires you to take risks, to put yourself out there, and to believe that the future will be better than the past. But keeping money requires the exact opposite. It requires humility. It requires a healthy dose of fear. It requires the realization that everything you've built can be taken away in a heartbeat if you aren't careful. Be optimistically paranoid. Plan for the plan not going according to plan. The world is littered with the corpses of financial geniuses who were great at getting rich but miserable at staying rich. They knew how to accelerate, but they never learned how to use the brakes. They treated the economy like a straight line when it is actually a recurring cycle of chaos. If you want to win, you have to realize that the most important part of any plan is having a plan for when the plan fails. That's the key. Survival is the only strategy that matters because, in the world of compounding, you cannot enjoy the gains if you are forced to exit the game. If you are wiped out by a single bad year, it doesn't matter how great your strategy was for the good years. You're dead. Financial success is simply about not dying. It's about being the last one standing when the dust settles. You have a choice. You can aim for the highest possible returns and risk total annihilation, or you can aim for pretty good returns that you can sustain through any storm. Most people choose the former because they are impatient. They want the shortcut, but the shortcut usually leads to a cliff. It's not about the profit, it's about the permanence. Think about the investors who were destroyed in 1929 or 2008. They weren't necessarily stupid. Many of them were incredibly smart by traditional standards, but they lacked a margin of safety. They were over-leveraged. They were playing a game where they needed everything to go perfectly just to stay afloat. When the world became imperfect, as it always does, they vanished. They didn't have the survival mindset. You don't need their permission to be cautious. You don't need to apologize for holding cash when everyone else is buying into a bubble. You don't need to feel left behind when your friends are bragging about 100% gains on speculative garbage. They are playing for the moment. You are playing for a lifetime. It's not about being right. It's about being unbreakable. A margin of safety is the only way to navigate an unpredictable world. It's the gap between what you think will happen and what can happen while still leaving you okay. If you think you need a 7% return to meet your goals, plan your life as if you'll only get 4%. If you think your job is secure, save as if you'll be unemployed tomorrow. This isn't being a pessimist. This is being a professional. That's the key. You must separate your optimism about the long term from your paranoia about the short term. You can believe that the world will be more prosperous in 20 years while simultaneously being terrified that a recession could hit next month. In fact, that is the only rational way to think. Optimism gives you the courage to invest. Paranoia gives you the discipline to survive long enough to see the payoff. You have a choice. You can build a house of cards that looks beautiful until the wind blows, or you can build a fortress. The fortress is slower to build. It's less exciting to look at. But when the hurricane hits, and it will hit, the fortress is the only thing left standing. It's not about the ceiling, it's about the floor. Most people are so focused on their potential that they ignore their vulnerability. They look at the upside and ignore the ruin. But ruin is a one-way street. Once you hit zero, the game is over. There is no compounding at zero. There is no recovery from total destruction. Your number one job is to avoid the zero at all costs. Be optimistically paranoid. Plan for the plan not going according to plan. Repeat this. Survival is the only bridge to wealth. If you can't survive the dips, you don't deserve the peaks. If you can't handle a 30% drop in your portfolio without panicking and selling, you shouldn't be in the market. You are a tourist in a war zone and you will get hurt. That's the key. Realize that the bad times are not a bug in the system. They are a feature. They are the price of admission for long-term wealth. If you have a survival mindset, you don't see a market crash as a tragedy. You see it as a sale. But you can only buy when things are on sale if you survive the crash with your capital and your sanity intact. You have a choice. You can be the genius for a day or the survivor for a decade. One gets you headlines, the other gets you freedom. It's not about the speed of your growth. It's about the strength of your foundation. You have mastered the art of survival. You have learned to protect your downside. Now, you must learn how to handle the fact that you will be wrong more often than you are right. You need to understand how to win big while losing frequently. Chapter 6. Win by losing often. Listen to me. Most people are terrified of being wrong. They think that to be a successful investor, they need to have a 90% hit rate. They think they need to be right about every stock, every property, and every trend. They are obsessed with perfection. But perfection is a pauper's game. If you require a high win rate to succeed, you are fragile. In the real world, the most successful people aren't the ones who are right the most often. They are the ones who make the most of the rare times they are right. It's not how often you're right. It's how much you make when you are right. In math and finance, we call this tail events. A tail event is the 1 in 100 occurrence that drives the majority of the results. Most of what you do will be average. Some of what you do will be a total failure. That is fine. That is part of the cost of admission. You can be wrong 50, 60, even 70% of the time and still retire with a fortune, as long as you don't let the losers kill you and you let the winners run. That's the key. You have to accept that your failures are the overhead of your success. You don't walk into a restaurant and get mad that they have to pay for electricity. That's just the cost of doing business. Your bad investments, your failed side hustles, your missed opportunities, that's just your financial electricity bill. Stop obsessing over the losses and start looking for the tails. You have a choice. You can play it so safe that you never have a loser, which means you'll never have a massive winner. Or you can accept a high volume of failure in exchange for the few tails that change your life forever. It's not about the average, it's about the outliers. Think about the art world. Thousands of paintings are bought and sold every year. Most of them will never increase in value. They are dead money. But a tiny fraction, the Picassos, the Monets, the Warhols, become worth hundreds of millions. These are the tails. A successful art collector doesn't need to be right about every painting. They just need to own one masterpiece. The same is true for the stock market. If you look at the S&P 500, a massive portion of the total returns over the last century came from a tiny handful of companies like Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft. If you missed those few tails, your returns would be mediocre or non-existent. You didn't need to pick every winner in the index. You just needed to be invested in the index long enough to capture the few that mattered. You don't need their permission to fail. You need the stomach to fail. Most people quit after their first 3 attempts don't work. They say, investing isn't for me, or I'm not good at business. They don't realize they are just midway through the failure portion of the distribution. They quit right before they hit the tail. It's not about your ego, it's about the math. Every venture capitalist knows this. They invest in 50 companies knowing that 40 will go to zero. They expect it. They plan for it. They don't go home and cry when a startup fails. They know that if just 2 of those 50 companies become the next Uber or Airbnb, they will make enough money to pay for all the failures 1,000 times over. They win by losing often. That's the key. You must diversify your efforts so that no single failure can take you out of the game, while keeping yourself exposed to as much upside as possible. This is the psychology of the tail. It requires you to be okay with being wrong in public. It requires you to stop trying to look like a genius and start acting like a statistician. You have a choice. You can be the person who tries to pick the winner with 100% certainty, which is impossible, or you can be the person who casts a wide net and waits for the whales. One is an ego trip. The other is a wealth strategy. It's not about the swing, it's about the slugging percentage. Stop beating yourself up for the money you lost on that bad trade or the business that never took off. If you are still in the game, you haven't lost. You are just paying the tax that the market demands for the chance to find a tail. The only way to truly lose is to let a failure discourage you so deeply that you stop trying. That is the only permanent loss. It's not how often you're right. It's how much you make when you are right. Repeat this: I am playing for the tails. Say it when you see red in your account. Say it when a project fails. You are searching for the outliers. Everything else is just noise. Everything else is just the cost of the search. That's the key. You have to realize that the world is messy, lopsided, and unfair. It doesn't reward consistent averageness. It rewards those who can survive the long stretches of nothing and the short bursts of everything. You have a choice. You can seek the comfort of being right or the freedom of being wealthy. You cannot have both. If you need to be right all the time, you will never take the risks necessary to find the tail. You mastered the math of failure. Now, you must learn the ultimate purpose of all this work. It's not about the digits in the bank, it's about the time on your clock. It's time to talk about the only thing money is actually good for. Chapter 7. Buy Your Own Freedom. Stop thinking about money in terms of what it can buy you. Start thinking about money in terms of what it can do for you. Most people spend their lives trading their time for money, only to spend that money on things that steal even more of their time. They are stuck in a loop of voluntary servitude. If you want to master the psychology of money, you have to realize that the highest dividend money pays is not a luxury car or a bigger house. It is the ability to own your morning. Control is the currency. Independence is the ROI. The greatest intrinsic value of money, and this is something no spreadsheet will ever tell you, is its ability to give you control over your time. Being able to do what you want when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want is the ultimate financial goal. That is true wealth. Everything else is just stuff. If you have $1 million but no control over your schedule, you aren't wealthy. You're just a high-priced tenant of your own life. That's the key. Research into human happiness shows one consistent factor: a sense of autonomy. People who feel in control of their lives are happier, more productive, and more resilient. Money is the tool that builds that autonomy. It's not about having enough to do nothing. It's about having enough to do exactly what you choose. You have a choice. You can use your money to impress people you don't even like, or you can use it to buy your way out of rooms you don't want to be in. It's not about the objects, it's about the options. Think about the 6-month cushion. Most people look at an emergency fund and see dead money. They see cash that isn't working for them because it isn't invested in the latest tech stock. They are wrong. That cash is working harder than any stock in your portfolio. It is working as an insurance policy against a toxic boss. It is working as a shield against a career move you don't want to make. It is the difference between being a victim of circumstance and being the architect of your future. You don't need their permission to walk away, but you do need the capital. Without a margin of safety, you are a hostage to your paycheck. You have to endure the disrespect. You have to stay in the city you hate. You have to do the work that kills your soul. But when you have freedom money, the power dynamic shifts. You aren't asking for a raise, you're offering your time on your terms. It's not about the salary, it's about the sovereignty. The problem is that most people trade their freedom for perceived status. They get a raise and immediately lock themselves into a higher monthly payment. They buy a more expensive car, a bigger mortgage, and more subscriptions. They think they are moving up. In reality, they are just building a bigger cage. They are making it impossible to ever stop working. They have traded the most valuable asset in existence, their time, for a pile of metal and wood that will be obsolete in 10 years. That's the key. You have to realize that wealth is the money you haven't spent. It is the option to retire early, the option to take a lower-paying job that you actually love, or the option to spend 6 months with a sick family member without asking for permission. You cannot see that wealth. It doesn't have a logo. It doesn't sit in the driveway, but it provides a level of peace that no luxury good can ever touch. You have a choice. You can look rich or you can be free. It is very difficult to do both. It's not about the appearance, it's about the autonomy. Repeat this: my time is my most valuable asset. Every dollar you save is a minute of your future that you own. Every debt you take on is a piece of your future that you've already sold to someone else. Stop selling your future for a present that doesn't satisfy you. Stop letting your ego dictate your schedule. Control is the currency. Independence is the ROI. If you want to be wealthy, you must prioritize flexibility over consumption. You must be willing to live below your means today so that you can live on your own terms tomorrow. This isn't about being a miser, it's about being a master. It's about understanding that the best house in the world is the one where you don't have to wake up and do something you hate just to pay for it. That's the key. True success is when you no longer care what the neighbors think of your lifestyle because you are too busy enjoying your liberty. Most people are rich on paper and poor in time. Don't be one of them. You have a choice. You can be a slave to your stuff or a master of your minutes. It's not about the balance in your account. It's about the freedom in your day. You've learned to buy your freedom. You've learned that time is the true prize. But now, we have to address the biggest trap on the road to freedom, the urge to show the world how successful you are. It's time to look at the invisible cost of your ego. Chapter 8: The Tragedy of the Shiny Car. Stop looking at the driveway. Stop looking at the wristwatches. Stop looking at the logos. You are being lied to by your own eyes. In the world of money, there is a massive, life-destroying difference between being rich and being wealthy. Most people spend their entire lives trying to look rich, and in the process, they ensure they will never actually be wealthy. They are falling for the oldest trap in the human playbook, the man in the car paradox. Wealth is what you don't see. Rich is what you spend. When you see someone driving a $100,000 car, what do you think? You think, wow, that person is successful, that person is a winner. But do you actually look at the driver? No, you look at the car and you imagine yourself in it. You imagine how much more respect you would get if you were behind that wheel. Here is the tragedy. The person driving that car thinks the same thing. They bought it because they wanted your respect, but you aren't giving it to them. You're too busy giving that respect to the car. That's the key. No one is as impressed with your possessions as you are. You think you're buying a signaling device to tell the world you've arrived. But the world isn't listening. They are only looking at the shiny object and thinking about themselves. You are spending thousands of dollars to get a reaction that never actually comes. You are burning your future to buy a status that doesn't exist. You have a choice. You can spend your money to look like a somebody, or you can keep your money and actually be a somebody. It's not about the flash, it's about the foundation. Wealth is the capital in the bank that hasn't been turned into a depreciating asset. Wealth is the stock portfolio you haven't sold. Wealth is the freedom you haven't traded for a leather interior. It is invisible. It is the silence of a house that is paid for. It is the peace of mind that comes from knowing you don't owe anyone a dime. Because wealth is what you don't see, it is incredibly hard to learn. We learn by imitation, but you can't imitate what you can't see. You don't need their permission to be modest. The world will try to shame you for it. They will call you cheap. They will ask why you haven't upgraded yet. Let them talk. While they are upgrading their debt, you are upgrading your freedom. While they are worrying about a scratch on their door, you are worrying about nothing at all. It's not about the image, it's about the independence. Think about the most successful people you know. Not the loudest ones, but the most successful ones. Usually, they are the ones who look the most ordinary. They don't have to prove anything because they have already won the game. The person who feels the need to shout about their money is usually the person who is most afraid of losing it. Real power doesn't need a megaphone. Real wealth doesn't need a spoiler on the back of a car. That's the key. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. It is a mathematical certainty. Every dollar you spend on a status symbol is a dollar that stops compounding for your future. It is a dollar that you have traded for a fleeting moment of perceived importance. And the worst part, that feeling of importance evaporates the second a newer model comes out. You have a choice. You can be a rich person, someone who has a high income and high expenses, or you can be a wealthy person, someone who has assets and options. A rich person is one bad month away from a collapse. A wealthy person is 10 years away from a care in the world. It's not about what you earn, it's about what you keep. Stop seeking validation from strangers who don't care about you. Stop trying to keep up with people who are drowning in debt just to stay relevant. You are playing a game with no finish line. The moment you catch up to the neighbor, they'll lease a newer car and you'll be behind again. You are letting someone else's insecurity dictate your bank balance. Wealth is what you don't see. Rich is what you spend. Repeat this. My ego is a luxury I cannot afford. When you feel the urge to buy something just to be seen, recognize it for what it is, a weakness. It is a hole in your psychological armor. A truly wealthy person doesn't need the car to feel powerful. They know they are powerful because they own their time. They know they are powerful because they have a margin of safety. That's the key. If you want to be wealthy, you have to get comfortable with people thinking you're just average. You have to be okay with being the boring person at the party with the older phone and the used car. Behind that average exterior is a level of financial strength that the shiny people can only dream of. You have a choice. You can have the appearance of success or the reality of it. It's not about the applause, it's about the assets. You've learned to ignore the shiny objects. You've learned that true wealth is invisible. But even with all the wealth in the world, you are still a human being. And human beings make mistakes. Now, you must learn how to build a life that accounts for your own flaws. Chapter 9. Leave room for the error of being human. You are not a machine. You are not a spreadsheet. And if you try to build a financial life that assumes you will always be logical, always be disciplined, and always be on, you are setting yourself up for a catastrophic failure. The biggest risk you face isn't the stock market crashing, it's the reality of your own humanity. You will get tired. You will get scared. You will change your mind. If your plan doesn't account for your own flaws, it isn't a plan, it's a fantasy. The gap between what could happen and what you can handle is your safety net. Most people build their financial lives based on perfect data. They look at historical averages and assume they will get exactly that. They assume they will never lose their job, never get sick, and never have an emotional breakdown during a market correction. They leave zero room for error. But in the real world, room for error is the only thing that keeps you from falling off the cliff when life gets messy. That's the key. A margin of safety is not just a financial calculation, it's a psychological necessity. It is the recognition that the world is uncertain and that you are an unpredictable variable. You don't save just for a house or a car. You save for the unknown unknowns. You save for the things you can't see coming because those are the things that actually destroy people. You have a choice. You can be precisely wrong or vaguely right. Most people try to be precisely wrong. They calculate their retirement down to the penny based on a 7% return. But if the world gives them 5%, they are finished. You should aim to be vaguely right. Give yourself so much room for error that even if the world is a disaster, you still cross the finish line. It's not about the forecast. It's about the flexibility. Think about a bridge. Engineers don't build a bridge to support the average weight of the cars passing over it. They build it to support 10 times that weight. They build it for the 1-in-100-year storm. Your life is the bridge. If you are living right at the edge of your income, one flat tire or one hospital bill will collapse the entire structure. You aren't being efficient by having no extra cash. You are being reckless. You don't need their permission to be overprepared. The world will tell you that cash is trash and that you're losing money to inflation. Let them talk. That cash isn't an investment, it's a psychological hedge. It is the price you pay to ensure that a bad month doesn't turn into a bad decade. It is the buffer that allows you to keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs. It's not about the yield, it's about the resilience. This applies to your goals too. The you of today wants one thing, but the you of 10 years from now might want something completely different. If you lock yourself into a hyper-specific financial path with no room for change, you are a prisoner of your past self. Leave room for the fact that you will change. Leave room for the fact that your priorities will shift. A good financial plan is one that is durable enough to survive your own evolution. That's the key. You have to be reasonable rather than rational. A rational person tries to maximize every cent. A reasonable person knows they need a good night's sleep. If holding extra cash makes you feel secure, do it, even if the math says you're losing out. If paying off your mortgage early gives you peace of mind, do it, even if the interest rate is low. You are a human being, not a calculator. You have a choice. You can optimize for the highest return, or you can optimize for the fewest regrets. It's not about the numbers, it's about the nerves. Repeat this. My plan is built for the storm, not the sun. When things are going well, it's easy to feel invincible. It's easy to trim the margin of safety. Don't do it. The margin of safety is what allows you to stay in the game when the unprecedented happens. And if the last few decades have taught us anything, it's that unprecedented things happen every few years. The gap between what could happen and what you can handle is your safety net. Most people fail because they mistake probability for certainty. They think that because something is likely to happen, it must happen. They don't prepare for the 5% chance of disaster. But in a long enough timeline, that 5% chance eventually becomes 100%. If you aren't prepared for it, you aren't an investor. You're a gambler who hasn't lost yet. That's the key. True discipline is maintaining your margin of safety when everyone else is telling you it's unnecessary. It is the quiet strength of knowing you can handle the worst-case scenario. When you have room for error, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be persistent. You have a choice. You can be the person who is destroyed by a mistake, or the person who is barely bothered by one. It's not about avoiding the error. It's about surviving the error. You've learned to account for your own humanity. You've built a life that can survive a mistake. Now, you must face the final truth. In a world full of noise, you are the only one who can decide what victory looks like. Chapter 10. You are the only variable. The world is full of people who want to tell you what to do with your money. The TV pundits, the gurus on your feed, the cousin who got lucky on a crypto coin, they all have an opinion. But here is the brutal truth. None of them are playing your game. They don't have your goals, they don't have your family, and they don't have your fears. If you take financial advice from someone playing a different game than you are asking for directions to a destination you aren't even trying to reach. Know your game, stay in your lane. In the economy, we are all on the same field, but we aren't all playing the same sport. A day trader is playing a game of minutes and sentiment. A retirement saver is playing a game of decades and compounding. When the day trader starts buying a speculative stock, they aren't wrong. They are playing their game. But if you, the long-term investor, start buying that stock because you see the price going up, you are making a fatal mistake. You are taking cues from a player whose rules do not apply to you. That's the key. Most financial disasters happen when long-term investors start acting like short-term traders because they are jealous of the returns. They see someone making a quick buck and they abandon their strategy. They forget that the person they are imitating has a completely different exit strategy. You have a choice. You can be an original version of yourself or a second-rate version of someone else. One leads to wealth, the other leads to ruin. It's not about the best investment. It's about the best investment for you. You must define your own winning. For some, winning is having $10 million and a high-stress life. For others, winning is having a paid-off cottage and the time to read books all afternoon. Neither is wrong, but trying to achieve one while using the tactics of the other is insanity. You don't need their permission to want what you want. You don't need to justify your lower returns if those returns allow you to sleep at night and spend time with your kids. That's the key. Stop comparing your inside to everyone else's outside. You see their new car, but you don't see their debt. You see their high-powered career, but you don't see their broken marriage. You are the only variable that matters in your financial equation. If the math makes sense but the psychology makes you miserable, the math is wrong. You have a choice. You can let the world set your benchmarks or you can set them yourself. It's not about the market's performance, it's about your peace. Repeat this: I am playing my own game. Say it when the market is screaming. Say it when your friends are bragging. You are not a spectator in your own life. You are the lead architect. If your plan is to be debt-free and conservative, stay debt-free and conservative. Don't let a headline about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity pull you off course. Know your game, stay in your lane. True wealth is the ability to ignore the noise. It is the discipline to stay the course when everyone else is pivoting. It is the maturity to realize that winning means reaching your goals, not beating the S&P 500 by 1% this year. Most people spend their lives looking sideways at the other lanes. They crash because they weren't looking at the road in front of them. That's the key. You are the only person who has to live with your financial decisions. The experts won't be there to pay your bills if their advice fails. The neighbors won't be there to fund your retirement if your status purchases go bust. You are the only variable. You are the only one who matters. It's not about being the best. It's about being the most consistent version of yourself. Listen to me. The audio is about to end, but your life is just beginning. You've spent the last 40 minutes learning that money is not a math problem. It's a character test. You've learned that your experience is a tiny sample size, that luck is a ghost you must respect, and that enough is the only shield against ruin. You've learned that wealth is what you don't see, and that time is the only leverage that never fails. But knowledge is useless without execution. If you turn this off and go back to chasing status, ignoring your margin of safety, and letting your ego drive your car, you are choosing to stay a slave. You have the map now. You know the traps. You know that the biggest obstacle to your freedom is the person staring back at you in the mirror. You have a choice. You can be rich in things and poor in time, or you can be wealthy in freedom and quiet in your success. I am challenging you right now. Go to your bank account. Look at your last 10 purchases. Ask yourself, was this for my freedom or was this for my ego? If it was for your ego, stop. Kill the hunger for more. Buy your own freedom. Own your morning. Subscribe to the discipline or stay a prisoner to the paycheck. The game is yours to win. Now get out there and stay in your lane. If this summary added value to your life, like the video, subscribe to Elevatepedia and keep elevating every single day.